friends with Dorothy, fighting for your civil rights. Out on the cruel streets tonight. For Sylvia and Marcia, life was harder than you'll ever know. Sylvie placed a star where others just threw a stone. Ignited, 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 yeah.
Okay, I'm joined this morning not by Ali G, but by Ali K, and her good friend Robert Downs from Squad Production. So welcome to you both to LGBTQ+life.
Thanks so much, mate.
Thank you.
Always good to be here.
Yeah. Robert, I'm going to just start with yourself. The production we're going to be talking about today is called A Thought Walk. Last time we had you on for Seen and Heard, I think it was Are You Lonesome Tonight, if I'm correct on that. How did that go, just as a matter of interest for the benefit of the listeners?
So Are You Lonesome was actually in the International Dublin.
It was the International, was it? Yes, I apologise.
Yeah, it was indeed, yeah. But it went great. I mean, look, it's a play that I definitely want to go back and edit and bring back at some point. But yeah, it was great. It went really well. And look, I have to say we're very lucky for the International Dublin Gay Theatre Festival and Seen and Heard. It's great to be able to show work in progress work and, you know, get some feedback as you're working on your shows and stuff like that. They're both brilliant festivals to be a part of.
Yeah. Now, before I talk to Ali about the current production, a couple of weeks ago, you probably wouldn't have imagined that it was going to be so much a live production. You might have thought we were going to continue on with the virtual productions. How did you feel when you discovered that the COVID restrictions were going to be lifted and you're now going to be able to do this in front of a live audience down there in Smock Alley?
Yeah, we couldn't be more excited about that one. Over the last 2 years, it's been obviously very difficult for artists, and we've kind of pivoted to doing radio plays and tried to keep ourselves going in some way, shape, or form. So when the restrictions were announced that it was coming down, it was partially relief and partially panic, because you're like, oh my God, yay, we can finally do it again. Oh no, we actually have to do it now. But really, I couldn't be more delighted. And I think, what we were looking at originally was 50% capacity, no chance of recouping any costs on the work in progress, all those kinds of things, which are very, it just makes making art even more difficult than it already is. So to be able to have a full audience and all that kind of stuff, it's just such a weight off our shoulders, and also slightly terrifying. It'll be our first time performing in a live situation for 2 years. So we're dying for it, but also a little bit nervous.
Just the good kind of nervous.
Yeah, exactly.
Ali, can I just ask you, before we talk about the creative forces that went into this production, because we have a few listeners in Australia, if somebody was to pick up the piece of paper, they'd probably say, this is Ali Keohane. Tell them how you would pronounce your name.
You'd say Keohane.
Exactly.
But I have a sister in Melbourne, so I think she's making moves there, making waves with the pronunciation, just to get it right all over across the globe.
Yeah, because people who we would perhaps call Keo, they would call Kehoe.
Yeah.
I know, but we won't go into this. Before we talk about this production, Ali, you're very much you've got a massive input to this. Let's not mince words on it. How important do you think it is now that we're developing female drama and female dramatists and even actors like yourself? How significant is that as an evolution?
I think for me, the most important thing is creating a balance with who we see on stage. And one of the things with creating this role is we wanted it to be playable by anyone. So we haven't necessarily said it's a female performer, it's female because it's me in this iteration, but anyone could take on this role and play it. And that was very important for us from the get-go, that we're like leaning into connecting with people kind of from all different backgrounds and all different walks of life. I think it's really, really important seeing more women in film and theatre. When I finished my undergrad in 2014, there wasn't quite so many, I suppose, role models to look at of women directing and leading performances, whereas comparatively now, there's so much more, and there's so many women that we can be grateful to for that. And I think we all, the first reference that always comes to mind is Fleabag and Phoebe Waller-Bridge, because she made massive, massive waves for us all. But yeah, I think there's a way to go, but it's really, really important that like we are seeing more representation and I suppose a diversity of input now compared to even what we would have had 10 years ago.
The reason why I ask you that is because what we're going to be talking about is a thought walk. Now, many people would suggest that the neural networks in the female brain are different, that female thoughts are perhaps different, not necessarily in themselves, that we sometimes think of the same concepts and the same ideas. How do you feel about that? And did that have any, did that play into this particular work?
Yeah, well, I suppose because we devised it, so basically I came in with elements of script and filmic elements, and then I worked in the room with Rob here and our initial collaborator, Paige Levy, who's on this one as well, and then Tamar came on for this production too. So the way it works is we bring things into the room and then we all kind of break them down and rebuild them with the input of the whole team. So I think while something might come in initially coming from quite a female perspective, a universality comes into it when we work through it together, which can be quite special, I think. Rob, absolutely, you probably find the same. So I think while there are probably certain thoughts and elements that might be considered more female, I think we've done a good job of mixing it up so that it's quite relatable across the board.
Yeah.
And one thing that when we did our initial work in progress way back in July 2020 from my home in the midst of lockdown.
In your bedroom.
In my bedroom. That's a whole other story.
That's not quite what I meant, but yeah.
So when we did that, it was one of our concerns is that we didn't want it to be a piece of work that only women related to. And what we found from our audience's feedback that a lot of people felt seen. And that was really important to us. They felt seen and they felt a bit of intimacy and connection to the performance from, well, one of the terms that came up was called out, because we have a lot of like whimsical elements that we're playing with, and we kind of use humor as a vehicle then to get into the kind of more dark and twisty nitty gritty of what goes on in our minds. So that was really important. I think that's fed a lot into what we're doing at the moment as well in this performance and this iteration.
Rob, you're the producer of this work. You're also the dramaturgist, as we would say.
Friends with Dorothy,
how do you find
fighting for your civil
the
rights.
mix of working with female creative forces and male creative forces? Or is this a generation that isn't quite as gender rigid as perhaps my generation?
For Sylvia and Marcia, life was
I think gender
silly
does
place to start,
matter. Not in
others just to
representation.
a stone.
We definitely need to see women, trans men, stages free. But I do think that as far as like division between male and female, it's definitely going away. Now, I may not be the best person to answer a question on this because in general I work a lot with female collaborators, and that just tends to be how I've worked for a long time. I don't know whether it's on purpose or not. I don't think so. I think I just tend to connect well with.
It's happened organically.
Yeah, I tend to connect well with female collaborators. So yeah, I mean, I think definitely gender is becoming less of a barrier for people now. I mean, that's not obviously 100% true all of the time, but I do think that in the room and in creating stuff, it is becoming less of an issue.
I think in the past we used to think we had to delineate roles by gender, and now we're finally getting to the point that we're like, actually, that was a construct that we made when we were writing stuff that wasn't necessary.
You've taken the words right out of my mouth, that if it is a social construct, can't we reconstruct it or deconstruct it or precisely? I want to go to yourself, Ali, because it's called A Thought Walk, and it says, coming for a walk with us. And the script says it's an experiment interweaving theatre, Foley artistry and film. We want to explore that most human of experiences. Tell us, what was the inspiration for you coming up with this? Because I would suspect you are your idea was the core of what we're going to see on the stage.
Yeah, well, that was the kind of seed point. I would say it's probably come a lot. It's come on a lot from where we began, but it was basically, I wanted to represent on stage that experience that I have felt and that I understood from talking to other people that they also felt, of having a conversation in your own mind, and that you can be in there talking to yourself, responding to yourself, this forward and back, and that sometimes your thoughts can feel like they are you, and then sometimes they can feel like they are so distanced from you and something totally unconnected that is just coming in and out, and you're not sure where it came from. So I suppose what we're doing here is we're taking film sequences into the live performance space in theatre and using it to create that texture of thought weaving and how a person might feel in conversation with their own thoughts in that space.
Yeah. If somebody was to say to you, that sounds a bit introspective or solipsistic, how would you respond?
I think that introspection was certainly a really important part of it initially, but then it's introspection that becomes shared, because you're then reaching out to other people and asking, do you feel this too? This is how I feel. This is something I experience. And often we've come back saying, yeah, I experienced that too. Like in our devising room when we're working, there's like this really like energized moment when we land on something that we're like, that's it. That is the moment that I feel when I'm on the train and I'm looking out the window and suddenly the argument I had with my partner last night is flying through my brain, but I also am thinking about the sandwich I'm going to buy in 20 minutes. Like all of those moments, while it comes from introspection. When it comes out, it becomes a shared experience.
Okay. Rob, you're the producer and the dramaturgist, as I say. Can you just very briefly explain to people what, leaving aside the human element of it, what is Foley artistry, the film element, and the theatre element that's involved here?
Absolutely. So what we're trying to do is create a new process of making work for ourselves, where we're using film and making film and video part of the performance, but almost as a character rather than just as a way of enhancing telling the story. The film is actually a character in itself. And Foley art, just in case people don't know what it is, it's making sounds that sound like other sounds, kind of. So for film, for example,
like horse, like horse hooves.
Monty Python,
exactly, the coconuts.
Yeah, exactly. It's that kind of work. Yeah, so it's Foley artistry can, it's actually incredible the kinds of sounds you can make. You want to make a skull cracking sound, you can use an onion and a hammer, and you record these sounds and use them. But in the context of what we're doing, we're bringing it live on stage. So we have a loop station, and our amazing Foley artist Paige Levy, she will, she'll make sounds that are part of the soundscape of the show or what's happening, and she loops them, they play, and it creates part of the character as well. So the Foley artistry and film elements are kind of coming together as a character in the piece itself, and then the human element is the actor or the performer who's going to interact with those things.
Which in this instance is Ali. Yeah.
Yes, that's Ali. In a way, like the way I've been thinking about it for myself is almost like puppetry. Film and Foley art is acting almost like a puppet, because for me as the dramaturg, it's my job to rooted in theatre as well as rooted in the three other elements that we're using. And theatre often uses, you know, inanimate objects to portray things, or uses, you know, like if I'm thinking of Collapsing Horse, they have an incredible show called Man with Enormous, what is it again? The Old Man with Enormous...
with enormous wings.
Yeah, Old Man with Enormous Wings. There are small little figurines that are used on stage, and it's the attention given to them that makes you know, so fascinated by them. And it's the same with what we're doing. The only difference is that it's very tech heavy and it's film and sound. But yeah.
Ali, can I ask you, you clearly, did you write this with a generic audience in mind, or do you think it will appeal to all ages? It's not just something, clearly it will appeal to people of your generation. Do you think it would also appeal to perhaps people of your parents' generation, or even your grandparents' generation?
I think so, and I hope so, because they're all coming on the 18th. But yeah, that's another thing that we've been trying to incorporate in the script as we go along, that it's not just our experience at this time in our lives. It's something that people more broadly can connect to and find, oh yeah, how did they know that I feel that?
Yeah.
And I have talked to, like, we did have a work in progress before that had a kind of mixed audience, and most people came back, or all people actually came back, saying that they connected quite deeply with it. But interestingly, that they drew from different parts. So they drew from different parts of the experience. I would say that maybe the younger audience were really drawn to the kind of more self-destructive sequences, and the kind of older audience members were really drawn to the kind of meditative sequences that were really leaning on that introspection, that like, how do I settle within my own mind by myself? So yeah, we're hoping anyway. I do think that it appeals widely, but that's something as well that we'll be looking in from our audience for feedback from on the 18th, because it is a work in progress. We'll be kind of asking them where they felt connection with the work, and was there an area that they really wanted to lean into more.
Sure. Okay. Rob, I'm going to leave the last word to you, and it's possibly the important word is, when is it on, where is it on, and how can people get tickets for it?
Absolutely. So we're delighted to be a part of Scene and Heard at Smock Alley Theatre again. So it'll be on at Smock Alley in the Black Box at 6:45 on the 18th of February. It's €16 a ticket, and people can find a link to the ticket. Sorry?
That's a Friday evening.
It is indeed Friday evening. So, you know, everybody's off work. There's no excuse not to come. But also if you're looking for tickets, you can get them on the Smock Alley website if you go onto the Scene and Heard page. And other than that, you can get a link to the tickets on all of our social media. So we're Squad Productions Dublin on Facebook, Instagram and Twitter. We even have an email if you want to email us. It's squadtheatrecompany@gmail.com. You can send us a carrier pigeon if you want. We just would love to see as many people at the work in progress as possible. We really would love to just get as many different kind of people's feedback as possible.
Yeah.
So
isn't it great that live theatre is back again? Unfortunately, we've run out of time, but we want to commend you on this very innovative and creative work, and we look forward to coming down and seeing you again and talking about it soon. So, Ali and Rob, you take care, and as we say, break a leg.
Thank you so much, Mick.
Thank you for your time.
Yeah.
Take a walk with me. Take a walk with me.
Will we go through the trees?
Or wander merrily.
Fall through fantasy?
Pensive reverie.
Looping endlessly?
Creeping memory.
Half-formed?
Part taught.
Igniting?
Dissolving.
Forgotten?
Fraught.
I don't want to go.
Relax. Like clouds they'll flow, not caught.
And before we go for today, I have something that I'd like to bring to the attention of our listeners. Many years ago, in a former life when I was living in Australia, I used to review books. And one of the books that came across my desk at the time was a book called Michael Dillon, The Story of the World's First Female to Male Transsexual. It was written by a lady called Liz Hodgkinson. Now, in itself, people might say, well, that's interesting, but what becomes more interesting for listeners of this particular program, and for Irish listeners and readers in particular, is that the person in question, Michael Dillon, not only qualified as a doctor in Trinity College Dublin, but Michael also was the heir to the baronetcy of Lismullen, which is in County Meath. Now, the book I'm going to suggest to you, Michael Dillon, it's worth reading in itself because it's a very, very interesting story. It is, however, a biography. In other words, it's third party. Liz has taken the life based on her research and told the story of Michael Dillon. However, what I found particularly fascinating is in the last couple of weeks, our good friends down there at Lilliput Press, now they're based in Stony Batter, they produced the autobiography of Michael Dillon, and it is a work called Out of the Ordinary, Michael Dillon stroke Lobsang Jivaka, A Life Through Gender and Spiritual Transition. Now, to understand what the significance of Michael Dillon and Lobsang Jivaka is, after Michael transitioned, should I say, Michael went through a whole series of adventures, became a ship's doctor and so on and so forth, but was then outed when the press discovered that the heir to the baronetcy of Lismullen had begun life as a woman called Laura. This will be a story that's very, very familiar to many people in our community. As a result of that, Michael, who had been studying Buddhism, went off to Tibet and became a Buddhist monk and adopted the name of Lobsang Jivaka. It's a fascinating story in itself. It's what took place in the 40s and the 50s will have an enormous resonance, an enormous empathy for a lot of people here. Now, over the next few weeks, I am hoping to be able to speak to somebody in the transgender community, or certainly in the academic community, about the Lilliput Press book, Out of the Ordinary, Michael Dillon stroke Lobsang Jivaka. But in the meantime, I want to impress upon people that if you're interested in particularly the subject of female to male transition, which is still quite misunderstood and is still not nearly as common as male to female transition, I'm going to highly recommend this book to you. Now, you're probably going to say to me, how can I get a copy, or where can I get a copy? Well, first of all, it is published by Lilliput Press. Lilliput Press, they have their own website. They're also on Facebook, and they have a fabulously welcoming shop down there in Smithfield, Arbor Hill, really, I suppose it is. So make a note for your diary that if this is something you're interested in, you'll probably get it on Amazon as well. But I'm trying to say, keep the money in Ireland. Get a copy of it through the publisher or through the publisher's retail outlet. But to cut a long story short, this is the story of the first female to male transition in their own words. While I still want to recommend the Liz Hodgkinson book, Michael Dillon, to you, because that is a very good read too, this is quite literally the authentic words and thoughts of the world's first female to male transition, and their transition actually took place in Dublin. This is very local. Laura was studying to become a doctor and qualified as a doctor in Trinity College Dublin, found a sympathetic surgeon who helped with hormonal treatment, and then the transition took place. So it's a very local story, it's a very modern story, and it's a very important story. So if I could just highlight this one more time for you, Out of the Ordinary by Michael Dillon stroke Lobsang Javaka, a life through gender and spiritual transition. Equally, if you happen to be interested in Buddhism, there is an enormous amount in this for you as well, because Michael spent the last, I think, 20 years of his life living in Tibet as a Buddhist monk. Now, I won't tell you what Michael's faith was, but there's two sides to this. There's the gender side to it, there's the transition side, and there's also the Buddhist side to it. So I can't recommend this too highly to you. It's only come out in the last few weeks. In the next couple of weeks, when we can find a suitable interview subject, we'll be talking about it somewhat more. But in the meantime, this is the book, Out of the Ordinary, published by Lilliput Press, and I think you'll find it very interesting and a terrific read. And before we go for the day, a couple of dates for your diary. The first one is next Friday, that's the 11th of February. The Wild Geeze present Brigid's Gay Cabaret. It'll be taking place at Cabinets in Ockram Street down there in Arbor Hill or Stony Batter, or whatever you want to call it, and it will be it will be featuring the immortal Wild Geeze themselves, which is the fabulous Frida Larkin and the awesome Ms. LaBelle. Also on the bill will be Patsy Pleasure. David Doherty Jeb will be filling in as well, and of course Gillian Fitzgerald. So that can't be bad. The price, $15. You can either the price is €15. You can either get them through Eventbrite or you can pay on the door on the night. The proceedings start at 8 p.m. and it's a night to remember, that's all I can say. So Brigid's Gay Cabaret down there, Cabinets in Ockram Street in Stony Batter. And the second one, which we would have told you about last week, it's the fabulous Candlelight Cabaret down there at the Moat Hotel, down there at the Moat Theatre in Naas. It's going to be hosted by a vocal reaction in Lotta Lungs. There'll also be awesome performances from our great friends Bella Gogo, Nicky Stones, Crimson La Creme, Scarlett Von Tassel, Butch Chastity, and Sparkling Spitfire. It's described as a queer-friendly night of burlesque, cabaret and comedy. It's the 13th of February, that's the Sunday. It starts at 8 p.m. and if you want to find out more, you can go to the Moat Theatre website, which is www.moattheatre.com. That's Sunday night, the 13th of February.
Friends of Dorothy come out off the sidewalk and onto the street to the sound of those legendary feet. When there's no place like home, anti-him, anti-establishment, with the chaff and the short straw, a step for sure. Anti-him, I'm anti-establishment. They took my name and the clothes I own. They broke our hearts, but not our souls. When there's no place like home, there's no place like home, when there's no place like